It is my sincere pleasure to get to introduce this presentation, Mixing Modern and Traditional Analytics with Sport in Rural Rwanda, and to get to introduce our presenter, Lindsay Kittredge, the co-founder and executive director of Shooting Touch. So now I'll kick it over to Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to commend you all for sticking around for the last session of the day. I think maybe it's a save the best for last situation. Hopefully you all think that. Wanted to thank MIT for having me here. As Lindsay said, I'm the executive director and co-founder of Shooting Touch. Shooting Touch is a nonprofit organization, international organization that uses the power of basketball to convey and extend health education and health educational services to at-risk youth here in Boston and actually overseas in Rwanda. We were founded on a very simple belief that Nelson Mandela often quoted, saying that the power of sport can change the world. I played college sports and was an athlete my whole life and was really passionate about the fact that the power of sport can act as a social change and a social agent in at-risk communities, and that's why this whole thing came about. So the organization was founded over in South Boston, actually, over at the Boston Athletic Club, pretty organically. Kind of came off of a events and camps and clinics model where we went and taught at-risk youth, and has since morphed into an international organization that has served over 25,000 youth to date when our 501c3 was incorporated in 2007. Our two objectives, I got notes here, so you guys I'm gonna flip through them, but our two objectives are to increase physical activity and wellness for at-risk youth and to extend health education and health educational services. So today I'm gonna talk to you primarily about Rwanda. Has anybody in this room been to Rwanda? Yes, awesome. It's an unbelievable place. We've been there for 7 years and went into the country without having any real connections on the ground. For many of you know, the reason why we're in Rwanda is in 1994 there was a civil war and the 94 genocide where over 1 million people were killed, leaving 15% of the population under the age of 15. So there was a huge youth demographic of folks that needed to be addressed and given resources and programming that could drastically help them, not only from a sport programming, but from an educational programming. We primarily work in the eastern portion of the country, and in the eastern province, which borders Tanzania, Uganda, and we have been there and are feeling really lucky to be able to serve the youth and the women that were there. But to give you more of a background of our program, I'd like just to roll a little video to give you more contextual information, and then from there I can go on about some more information on our program. I think it will work, maybe. Yes?
There are places in the world today where human rights are still challenged, where healthcare is severely lacking, and where education is nowhere near what it should be. Yes, in places around the world like Rwanda, and places right around the corner like Boston, communities face this kind of adversity every day. Yet despite their hardships, the people in these communities are incredibly strong and very proud. They want to be and do better. They just need a little help. They need a little inspiration and a little guidance. Most importantly, they need other people who care enough to find new ways to help them. Well, we found a new way. It's called basketball. At Shooting Touch, we've been traveling to Rwanda since 2011, setting up clinics in each of their 5 provinces. We're running sister programs right here in Boston, working with mentors from the Boston Police Department as well as Children's Hospital. We're building courts, providing equipment, uniforms, instruction, and coaching for all ages. It's fun, exciting, and gives everyone in these communities a chance to play and learn. Because it's not just all about fun, it actually goes much deeper. Because while we're all playing and coaching, we're all teaching and learning valuable life lessons. Lessons like respect for women, the power of knowledge and education, especially health education, which includes things like proper nutrition and sex education. But perhaps most valuable of all, Shooting Touch provides inspiration that leads to not just hope, but actual knowledge that builds belief that these communities can and will have a better life. The support has been amazing, and the success has been incredible. Shooting Touch is a life-altering, sustainable program that makes a lasting impact on everyone it touches, including all of us who work here.
Every kid deserves proper nutrition.
Every kid deserves a better health education.
Every kid deserves respect.
Every kid deserves a better future.
Shooting Touch, because when it comes to a better life,
every kid deserves a shot.
So hopefully that provided a little bit more contextual information on what we do. So just to bring it back a little bit, we've gone into the country, have built basketball courts in very strategic areas and very impoverished areas where basic health living needs are barely met. We've either placed the courts next to schools, health clinics, hospitals, where we could get not only the services of those institutions, but also the foot traffic from children and adults. And we've gone into 5 communities, built these platforms of basketball, created basketball programming, have built a health curriculum, 8-part unit health curriculum that we self-designed over the last 7 years, have employed over 18 coaches, have 3 program directors, as well as American fellows that come over and help staff our programming. And we use the platform of basketball and the mobilizing tool that it is to extend this health education and provide health care. We were building the courts about 3 years ago, and we realized very quickly that we're standing, I remember very specifically, I was standing on the edge of the court one day, and I looked over and I saw like 3 or 4 children kind of lying really like malaised, and I could see that they had like a very high fever. I looked over at one other part of the court, and I saw a woman holding her very, very sick child. And the people in our communities thrive on these courts. It's the thing that they think about when they wake up in the morning. It's the thing that they go to every day to not only gain friendships and social development and education on gender-based violence and the only source of joy for the day, but when we looked over and saw that a lot of these people who typically play every day weren't playing, sort of a light bulb went off, and then we said to ourselves, they're too sick to play. And it was our obligation, I felt it was our obligation to provide them with health care and health care coverage to get them well, because it was irresponsible in my mentality to introduce them to a game and in a community, and if they were too sick to play it, then well, what's the point? So 3 years ago, we started a health care. So every member of Shooting Touch gets health care coverage for the year, and up to 5 members of their household every year. The average household in Rwanda is about 7. So over the last 4 years, we have given health care to over 7,210 individuals. So we're not only teaching them the education of the game, getting them physically active, giving them education on disease promotion and health, disease prevention and health promotion, and then also providing them the tools to get them well. So it's kind of a holistic approach to what we do. We quite literally cannot meet the demand of the programming. We serve indirectly 1,500 youth and women, and directly 1,500 youth and women, and indirectly over 8,000 people every day. So these are people that are coming to our court, showing up for practice after school, playing basketball, getting a health lesson for whatever unit we're on every day, and then taking that information, going back to their communities, and showing, hopefully, behavioral change. So just to give you, again, an idea of the type of difficulties that our players face, I just wanted to tell you 2 stories, or maybe 3. But the first story is Katarama. She is a 53-year-old Shooting Touch player in one of our villages, Namirama. She hadn't been to practice or engaged in Shooting Touch programming, but 3 years ago, her 13-year-old daughter died from malaria. And in Rwanda, malaria is a pretty detectable disease. If you sleep under a mosquito net and you do the appropriate measures, you typically increase your chances of not getting the disease. Katarama's 13-year-old daughter passed away. She came to Shooting Touch knowing the community that we've built, walked to the court, and stayed for us for 3 months coming. She never missed a practice. She was unbelievably passionate. Her basketball skills could use a little work, but other than that, she was unbelievably passionate and loved the friendships that she had built. As she had signed up for healthcare, because that's how we start the process. When our players join us, we sign them up for healthcare. we got word that her second child passed away from malaria. At 28 years of age, he was in the field, didn't recognize that he had a high fever, and collapsed and died. Our shooting touch coaches recognized that as one of our most consistent players showing up every day, where's Katarama? Why isn't she here? They went to her house, learned of her tragedy, consoled her, helped her family pay for the funerals, and then we were hoping that Katarama would come back to practice. She didn't show up for 5 days, but then she came back, knowing again that the assets that we bring for not only the health education, but the health care for the rest of her 7-member family were a life-saving tool for her. So she's since in the program, and the rest of her family has health care and will hopefully stay healthy and live a longer life. The second story that I wanted to tell you about is Chantel. Chantel has 3 children. She's 35 years old. She makes a living by being the housekeeper for our in-country program director and program directors in a village called Rinkwavu. It's at the basin of a canyon where actually Partners in Health has built their hospital. Chantel makes all the money in her family. Her husband does no work and is the victim of abuse, mental and physical, within her household because her husband was angry with her that she went out, made all the money, and then didn't do anything to give him any of it. So they came up with a huge abusive relationship. She would call him. He was not supportive of him coming to shooting touch at all. And then slowly after the education that our program directors gave her about showing that women have a right to play basketball, women have a right to be in sport, women have a right to earn money, she wrote this quote, which I'll read. And she said, this was after we had given a gender-based violence empowerment clinic, and she came back and said, yesterday was amazing. I went to practice, and when I came home, the beans were cooked, the house was clean, Gasimba did it. Home is better now. When you and Lisanne's our in-country program director, asked some women at the focus group a few months ago why our men don't help around the house, she said, this is how all the men in Rwanda are. You and Lisanne said, that's not right. So they went home and asked Gasimba, why don't you help me? I'm tired, I do everything. If you don't help, I will go. He was mad, and they didn't talk for 5 months. But I told him she would take the kids and she would leave. And long story short, he changed his tune, realized the value that she brought, realized the value and the health benefits that she was providing through the healthcare program, and has since repaired her relationship with her husband because of the education that we've given her. Lastly, the quick story is, and this is probably my most powerful, is 3 months ago, our in-country program director was standing at the edge of our court, and a 15-year-old girl approached her. And she said, I want to thank you. And our in-country program director didn't know why. She said, told her the story that during our basketball practice, there's a term called Oya Simbishaka, and that means I don't want. So when they're playing defense, they kind of joke around and say, Oya Simbishaka. And it's been kind of a term that's exchanged throughout our practices, especially for our girls. This 15-year-old girl told our Lisanne, our program director, last night, another boy in my village approached me and tried to force himself on me. And she said to him, Oya Simbishaka, Oya Simbishaka. And he picked up his stuff and he said, you must be a shooting touch girl. And he picked up his stuff and walked away. So when you have that type of empowerment where girls are now fending off unwanted advances and rape because of the lessons that we're teaching on the court, and you have women that are changing the social norms within their households, and you have women that are recovering from the immeasurable grief of losing 2 children, we know that this programming is working, and we know that the programming that we're providing is really, really unique. But to bring it back to the conference and why we're all here, as we were learning all of these stories about our programming and our deliverables and our health outcomes, we kind of said, like, well, how do we measure this? Like, what data can we extract from various resources that we have, and to make sure that we're addressing the needs within the communities the right way? And how do we take such massive public health issues, tie them to the communities, and change the outcomes? And I also just want to remind everybody that the reason why all of these outcomes, these massive issues, are happening is because of the power of sport and the mobilizing factor that it has. We've had government officials in Rwanda approach us, and district folks in the ministries of health and sport say to us, like, They couldn't understand how we could mobilize over 1,000 people every single day to come to our courts when they had trouble getting people to go to health services to get vaccines that they needed or go to hospitals to get the care that they needed, but they were showing up at the courts that we built and the programming that we provided every day. And I think that just is so important for us all to realize that the power of sport, especially in at-risk communities, is massive, especially in this environment. But again, to get back to, how do we use data to analyze our programming and how have we come this far? Some of the challenges that we have in working in rural Rwanda, it's hard. I mean, it's really, really tricky. We have limited internet access. Only 12% of the homes in our villages have electricity, so even when we do have a network connection, it's super spotty. The lack of education that we have just generally through our community is small. Only 5% of Shooting Touch women have attended university. There's a huge overpopulation of schools, so the dilution of quality education is there. So people aren't necessarily quite understanding everything that they need in schools. And then many of our Shooting Touch beneficiaries struggle to read and write and just generally have like the baseline of education that all of us often take for granted. So we go through, having this set of information is hard to get. It's hard to get in such a hard place to work and live. So what we've had to do is come up with a mixture of traditional and modern data analysis. And I know that this is not going to compare to all the things that you guys have heard today that are like super technological, I don't know if that's a word, but this is just like the best approach that we have found. And the traditional methods that we've been using are home visits, focus group discussions, and oral exams. The home visits are us going into the communities, sitting down with our beneficiaries and kind of really understanding the behavioral change that goes around in the communities so that we can textualize the data that we're able to extract. Focus group discussions are getting the opinions and like the true feelings that people have about the topics that we're trying to teach in a safe environment. Often people don't want to talk about gender-based violence or HIV or malaria or things that are sensitive, and so when we have small environments, the focus group discussions really help. And then obviously oral exams, when people can't read or write, you clearly have to come up with alternative ways of getting the oral information across. The modern methods that we use, and again, we are a nonprofit, so our budget for investments in technology is not high, but we have been using something called ComCare, and it's a mobile application software system that takes mobile phones, like a regular Motorola phone with a SIM card in it, and enables a pre-loaded survey with targeted questions to be loaded onto the survey, given to our field staff, go into those communities, and have people in Kinyarwanda, all translated, give their information, their answers on the survey. So that's been a really interesting tactic for us, because then we've been able to get, again, people being able to answer surveys in their privacy of their own home. Then we take the information and upload that into a software that we're able to analyze. And then another side is using the mobile phone for people to purchase healthcare, which is an amazing thing for us. Is if you're trying to mobilize over 20,000 people to sign up for healthcare, it's a really tricky thing to be able to do. So what we've done is gone literally door to door, home to home, and the homes I'm speaking of are mud homes with a cement floor, maybe a window, maybe not, a hole in the ground. That's the type of basic living needs that our communities are in. So we go home to home and we give our participants the phone, and they're able to press a button and sign up for healthcare, and also understand the education as to why they need to sign up for healthcare. And that's all of our basketball coaches are the ones that go out into the field and do that work. So that's sort of the mixture of traditional methods and modern methods that we're using. This is our step-by-step approach. Again, nothing completely mind-blowing here, but it was important for us to come up with something that enabled us to create extremely impactful health outcomes. The first one is obviously to go and see what the district levels are doing, what the district levels are saying about what diseases are prevalent in certain areas of the country, what the Ministry of Health is saying. And that enabled us to figure out, okay, we're going to develop an 8-unit health curriculum. And from there, we're going to, I just got the 5-minute mark, I didn't realize that. But So therefore, we were able to go through the area of detection. We did pre- and post-event analysis and data collection, and then again, we went into surveys. But we did things like figure out, when we went through all of these steps, that on our pre-intervention, we would go in and say, okay, well, people had malaria nets, but we looked at the people who had malaria nets, and all of the malaria nets had holes in them. Or we'd think about non-communicable diseases that we wanted to address, and we'd go in and we see people with smoke in their homes, not really realizing that they needed a ventilation systems. So those are just a couple of quick examples. These are the national stats that I had talked about. This was the pre-intervention data collection. These are some of the focus group findings that we saw. We also as another example, we figured out that for sexual reproductive health, a lot of females were struggling with the word no. Like a lot of the education in the communities, people thought that girls were just playing hard to get, and they weren't actually saying no to rape. And obviously, by that Oyas and Bishaka story, that was not the case. With WASH, our water hydration sanitation unit, people didn't understand that if the water ran dry in communities, that they don't go down to the swamp and drink the water, that they have to find other systems for it. This, after our 3-month pre-intervention, when we figured out what the issues were, we then tweaked our curriculum, and after 3 months, we did another intervention to figure out where the education was. And obviously, per this graph, it shows that there was definitely an increase of knowledge, for sure, across the board, and things like having people use clean water drop solutions that we provided to purify the water. We had girls that were standing up for themselves against sexual advances. We had, specifically with the example of smoke coming into the home, we saw that people had learned to push out bricks in their home to create ventilation systems so that the air would go out. So therefore, the acute respiratory infection, which was the #1 national district stat, could therefore be impacted. So these are just some of the pre and post analysis that we were able to extract by using the mixture of modern and traditional data. The tricky part was figuring out how the home visits and how that behavioral change was brought to the communities. We did realize, along the way, and something that we've been able to work on is the fact that people were not necessarily reporting accurate information. They may say that they clean all their water, or they may provide storage for it, but when we actually took the data and took the communities that we went in, we saw that people actually weren't storing water and that they were basically not transferring the right reporting. So that said to us that we needed to figure out other ways to continue to educate and know that behavioral change takes time, and that we have to come up with more ways to engage our people on the court every day. And so that's been the real sort of evolution of what we've done and how we've taken such challenging circumstances, tweaked them as we continue to grow, and that's sort of the summary. And so for here, I think the main takeaways are that obviously the value of human interaction is paramount. I think a lot of people throughout this conference have said that although data is really important, and it's a baseline and it's a barometer of where you are in whatever field of work that you're working in, if you don't understand the heart and the human behavior behind it, it's not as effective. And that's specifically a huge lesson in our case. And then obviously, recognizing that we continually need to tweak as a program as we continue to grow and hopefully figure out where we can be when we reach our strategic goal in 2023. But these are just some of the conclusions that we came up with. If we had the right amount of funding, if we had the right amount of money, could we prove that the investments in sports as an organization can directly impact healthcare costs, not only in developing countries, but in all countries, which is a pretty massive topic to think about. What would that do for global healthcare, and how can we continue to evolve, striving towards that goal of being able to accomplish such massive health outcomes and saving, a lot of lives using the power of sport? If we could continue to evolve as an organization, where would the world be? So that's really sort of the summary of where we are. I would employ all of you that if any of you want to learn more about the organization, please don't hesitate to contact me. We are giving fellowships out. We have college graduating fellowships that we give every year to folks who want to come overseas and work for us. It's an incredible life-changing experience and puts people on a massive trajectory. And then, obviously, selfishly, as a nonprofit diehard. If all of you are looking to trying to take data to like change the world around you and help others and help the benefit of drastic health movements, like really think about it, because I never thought that I was going to be in this profession, and I've found it to be absolutely the most rewarding job and labor of love that I almost expected. So that is it. That's the finale of the organization. So much information. I didn't think 25 minutes was going to go as fast as it did. But does anybody have any questions about anything? Yeah.
Thanks for the emotionally good presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Two simple, short questions about the plans for expansion to other countries, because the model that can be replicated.
Yes.
And another question about the donors, how you raise.
Yep, so the answer to your question on going to other countries, we've been approached to go to like all over the world. I think with the appropriate amount of funding, anything is possible. We are working towards a $1 million operating budget just for our program in Rwanda, but have to raise $5 million by 2023 as an organization. We right now in Rwanda, by 2023, want to increase our participation rate by 50% in 4.5 years. I think that's probably going to happen sooner than that. We have a very replicable model. We've been asked to go to South America, Asia. We've been asked to go all these places, but it's just a matter of funding and enabling for that expansion to happen. The second part to your question, we have a 5-pronged development strategy. One is annual income. So we raise events and fundraisers here in Boston. We have individual contributions that have been increasing because more people have come to see our programming face-to-face, which is, again, a life-changing opportunity for them. We have grants that are, it took a while for us to get these amazing grants because we needed the results to be able to prove, and then we've been happy to be on a global platform. We were given an International Olympic Committee grant. We've been given a Beyond Sport grant. We've been rising the tides with the exposure internationally. And then the last one that we are working on this year is getting some more institutional funding through partners that really value the role of sports and how it can impact health in challenging communities. If any of you have funding that you'd like to give us, we take it. Yeah.
I had a question. So you talked about how the home visits and focus groups are really crucial. How are you able to build that trust?
Yeah. Yeah, it's taken a while. It took us a while, especially given Rwandans' history. Rwandans in general have been slow to trust for obvious reasons. And we have been in the communities that we're in for 7 years and have had consistent staffing and consistent program direction. So the trust is there from our team level. And our program directors are incredibly special people, and they go in and they go well above and beyond their project goals and really sit down with the families and get to know them. And I think being in the communities that we're in, it's almost impossible not to become emotionally invested in the people around you. And so I think the reciprocal side of that is that our beneficiaries have seen that. And so they understand that if we bring in a donor to sit in their home and have Katarama tell us her story, they know by that information that they're going to give us more resources and we'll be able to help them and more people like them. So it's taken a while, and it's a pretty powerful thing if other people have experienced it. But any other questions? No? All right, thank you guys. Appreciate you all listening. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have volunteering opportunities in Boston or needs in Boston?
Yeah, we do. So I didn't even mention the Boston program. We serve 150 girls in Boston ages 9 through 17 that work on the similar model of health education programming. And we do have volunteer opportunities, so I can give you my card and we can be in touch.
Any back office requirements as well?
I'm sorry?
Back office requirements as well?
If you're passionate about the program, and I mean, we have certain sets of intern opportunities and volunteer opportunities that I'm happy to talk to you about directly. Yeah, okay. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a happy Friday.